Welcome back to the desert, everyone. Welcome back to episode 5. I hope everybody had a great Cinco de Mayo and did not suffer too much from the revenge of the 6th. So, as you've been seeing for the past couple of weeks, I'm still working on the parts for the main hold. Getting really close. Today should be the last video of installing fiber, at least for this section of the build. Of course, I still have the cockpit to do and all the other parts, et cetera, et cetera. But at least for the main hold, this should be the end of it. That's, of course, the nav console. As you can see, it's already got quite a bit of fibers in it. There's still some more left to do. I have to put some half mil fibers. I think there's 5 holes in that piece along the top, and one under the circular navigation thing. I don't know what it is. Yeah, always make sure that you check the holes. I have a hard time telling the difference between the 3/4 of a millimeter and the half millimeter. The 1/4 millimeter ones, of course, those are tiny. So if I see an itty bitty hole, I just assume that it's the super small ones. So I did add this hole to the side. I previously punched it out with just the guitar string. Like I said, I do. But of course it didn't fit. Since I was working with the half millimeter fibers, I decided to go ahead and stick a half millimeter fiber in there. It's also the half millimeter and the 3/4 millimeter ones are also a lot nicer to work with because, again, they are thicker. I did notice that I had one cable that was one fiber that was slightly sticking out. It did not come loose. I just wanted to make sure it was pushed back in there because, again, if something is not in line with all the other ones, there is a possibility that maybe one came loose or something moved. So that's why I always like to keep them tight and organized. Just to avoid mistakes, because once things are installed, it's going to be really, really hard, if not impossible, to fix anything. So I just really want to make sure that everything is good. Again, all the fibers are nice and secure. So as you'll see, I'm checking them many times, and this is done over several weeks. And one tip that I've for myself is don't try to do all the fibers at once. When I started on the nav console, I think I had 3 sets of 1/4 millimeter fiber, maybe like 20 in one, 15 or 16 in another one, and then like 8 in the third bank. I put them all in at the same time, and it was a pain. They kept slipping. They were coming loose. I was afraid they were going to fall out. So I would recommend, and what I've been doing now is doing a few of them and then putting the glue on and then doing it coming back. As you noticed this there, I realized that because I'd added that one additional hole, I actually needed 6 fibers, not 5. So it's got to do one more, and here goes in the side. It's getting crowded in there. It's getting harder to pull things through without getting them caught up in all the other fibers. It might seem weird that I'm pushing the fibers through the front and then pulling them all the way through. A couple of reasons. A, it's easier because in the front I know exactly where they're supposed to go, so I can just put it right in the hole. And especially on this piece on the back, if you notice, it is recessed. So there's basically a lip around the whole outside, plus all the extra fibers that are on the inside already. It's very hard to get access to the holes from the back side. So I've just been pushing them through from the front. Lots of glue. Again, I don't want anything to come loose. I've been trying to make sure they get it between the fibers on all sides, pushing it in between, making sure I put enough on there so that it can kind of run down between the fibers as well. So these last 2, this I'm actually going to use 3/4 mil fibers. It looks like it's some kind of ocular thing where you maybe put your face up against it to look into something. So rather than just inserting the fibers, I decided I was going to slightly splay the ends and make it like a lens on the inside. Because also, if you look at the piece closely, they do flare out slightly. So I thought it would be a great idea to have a little flare, inside with the lens. And this is my first try, and as you can see, it actually fit quite nicely. Didn't go in too deep, but it was nice. I think it's actually going to look pretty good. This is the second one, but I got way too close. Yeah, it got big fast. The first one, of course, as you saw, I did it very slowly, very from a distance. This one was definitely a bit too close. And I do want them to match, of course. So this one stops on top. It won't even go in the hole. So it looks cool. It looks like a little bump on top, but I don't know how bright it's going to be. But for now, I figured I'd make them both slightly smaller because that's my initial idea. When I test them with lights attached, we'll see how bright it is, and whether the lens sitting on top or sitting inside looks better. But that's something I can adjust later because that's just cutting off the end and redoing it. Since these are installed after the painting, it's not that big of a deal. The ones that I'm going to cut, that I'm not going to splay the ends, those of course I'm installing all first so that I can paint. I'm leaving them sticking out, of course, so that when the painting's done, I can just go through and trim them all, and they'll have a nice clean end for the light to shine through. So those are those two done. Now I did notice on this one here, there's actually, the reason I noticed this is because in the back there's 3 holes, but there's no holes in the front. Of course I painted over the whole thing. I did not pay attention to that, so here I am busy trying to scrape off the primer that I sprayed on, so that when I put a fiber in the hole in the back, it will shine through enough, at least shine through the front. I did eventually get it. It did take a bit of scraping with a knife, and then I used a pin as well, as you'll see in a moment. They're really tiny, and again, it's 3D printed parts, super fragile, brittle as they are, and then with a knife or with something metal trying to scrape up against them, very brittle, and I don't want to damage the little lip. There's a tiny little lip around each oval, so I'm really just trying to get the inside. And when it comes time to paint it, I can put some clear on top of it to get rid of any of the scratches that I have in there. Should make it a bit nicer. Clean up well. So in here, I'm just putting the fiber in the back. It's a tiny little hole. It doesn't go very deep at all. But I just want to make sure that I can get some kind of thing. So that's where it is in the front. I'm holding it up just in the light. You can see it slightly come through. So again, I think I can work on that a little bit more. But even if I get just any kind of light coming through it, I think it'll look nice. So there's 3 of them, so I'm just installing the second and third fibers in those tiny holes in the back. Lots of glue. Especially for these, because these don't even go all the way through, so they're just really barely hanging in there. So I just want to make sure that, again, they stay. Because that would just suck. If they fell out while I was installing it, that would just suck. I have been thinking about an alternate method for bundling the fibers. I have a whole pack of straws. Plastic straws. I bought them a long time ago. I don't use them anymore. I actually use metal straws now. But I have a pack of plastic straws, and I was thinking of maybe slitting them down the side. And since they are plastic, when you cut a straw, they tend to roll up slightly smaller. But I was thinking that might be a good way to bundle the fibers, and it would be a lot easier to put it on too. I wouldn't have to slide them all through, so I could put several sections on maybe before painting. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing before I start painting the pieces. Just a little test. I know it's kind of geeky, but just even seeing those 9 little lights makes me happy. It means that things are working. This little piece is crazy. This little itty bitty piece again has 20 fibers coming out of it. Right now it's got about 8, so I've got about 12 more to install. There was it looked like there were 3 size holes. They are square holes, which is kind of weird. And I think that's probably the issue that I'm having. That I was trying to fit literally a round fiber into a square hole. So they look like 3/4 millimeter, but nope, they were 1/2 millimeter. So back to the drawing board, get the 1/2 millimeter, cut a bunch of sections of that. This is the little control panel that goes inside the bunk in the main hole. It's on the, if you're looking at the bunk, it's on the far right side. Yeah, 1/2 millimeter fits fine. So on this little piece, because again there's no recess like the nav console. Some of them actually I can't push through the push through the back, so it's a much shorter distance to pull them through. Probably better. I'm guessing that probably the lesser distance you need to pull them through, the less chance of the fiber getting scratched. I'm not quite sure if that really is an issue. I'm assuming that it probably would be, since the light should be bouncing around on the inside to come out on the end. So if there's a scratch or a nick or something in the side of the fiber, I would assume that the light could escape from the side there as well. So I am trying to be careful. Times like these, I wish I had hands the size of my daughter's hands. A lot easier. They're so thin. Installing the 1/4 millimeter ones is not so bad. It's just that they're so curly. So if anybody has an idea for how to uncurl a whole bunch of fiber, let me know. I don't want to heat them up or anything like that, because I'm afraid I'm gonna bend them or kink them or something like that. But if there's somebody knows a very, very simple, very safe way to uncurl a bunch of fiber at once, please let me know. It'd be greatly appreciated. See, here's what I was saying about keeping all the fibers together and keeping them. So at least this way, right away, I knew that one had come out, because it was sticking out. So I just want to keep everything organized. This one I got to be careful, this little piece, because again, it does mount into the bunk on the side, so I've got to make sure that all the glue is only on the back. But the problem is, with 20 fibers sticking out, there's not much space left on the back. And then again, the 1/4 mil fibers are the ones giving the issues. Tied a knot around the other ones. Alright, so the glue should have dried on the nav console for the ones I put in earlier. Next thing I want to do, so on this section right there that I just highlighted, there are 2 little slots. I'm not sure if some people maybe put an LED behind it and just have them flash together. What I decided to do was, since they're slightly wide, is I put 3 fibers in each. I tried to fit a 4th one in, it wouldn't go through. So I have 3 fibers in the top and 3 fibers in the bottom. This way I could either have, 3 of the same colors, I could have flashing lights, I could have pattern lights, I could do something. So I figured it would just give me more options rather than just a single color light. And again, just kind of geeking out a little bit. Fibers actually work. They do what they're supposed to do. Now what I'm doing is, again, all the glue's dried for all the fibers, so I just want to go through and trim them slightly. I do want them sticking out, of course, because I am going to paint first. So I don't want to have have them flush the way they're supposed to be, because I do want to be able to cut them off later after they've been painted. But I don't want them sticking out very far either, because that way they'll also get in the way of painting. So I'm just trimming it back slightly. I was using scissors before, but I noticed that at one point when I was trying to fit a fiber through, because even though the scissors are quite sharp, they do cut at an angle, and it leaves the front surface of the fiber not quite flat. So that's why I figured I'd try these model cutters, plastic cutters, and they work great, especially with the flat side up against where the part that I want flat. And again, they're also super sharp. So that seems to work okay. So yeah, I'm just going through, just trimming all the pieces, making sure they're ready. Because again, I do want to be, I want to be done with this section. I do want to paint. I do want to start assembling and start laying out the interior, and start building some extra bits as well. Fibers are going to look cool at the end, but building is more fun. Here's the maintenance bits I built. I think it was episode 2, maybe 3. Just again, want to make sure that everything still works. Should be good. Didn't really do anything to them. They haven't been dropped in. It's just LEDs. But it looks cool. Again, Probably triple check, quadruple check, make sure everything's good. Those are all the pieces. That's what's gonna get painted. I do have a few other little bits and bobs, like some hoses that go on the side panels and things like that. I did actually totally forget this. This was in a separate box. It's the game table. It's got a lot of holes in it for fibers as well. I did try to stick, I think you might see it in a minute, I tried to put a pin through it. No, I didn't show you. But they're still full. I need to clean out the wax that's inside, so I'll use some acetone for that. These are they go on the belly of the Falcon. These are for the 4 main landing gear. There are holes in them for mounting it to the basically computer monitor mount that they give you at the end of the build. I don't like that because it was a big plate. I just think it looks really ugly. So I wanted to fill them up. I've mentioned before, I think I'm going to mount it from the side. So I've been filling them. I did fill them up. I used Tamiya model putty, but it shrank a lot. It's probably not the best thing to do for a hole this big. I probably should have plugged it and then filled it, but it is what it is. I actually did it last year. This was 14 months ago. I did add some more, but it's finally full enough now that I can grind up the sides and recut some of the panel lines. I'm just making sure the step down works because as you can see, there's different levels. So lots of sanding, filing, cutting, sanding, filing. I know it's going to be underneath, but I do want it to. I do want it to look good. So I'm taking my time. Time to cut the panel lines in again. Yeah, probably not a smart idea just to try to go in with a saw right away. So glad I stopped myself. Decided to score the lines first with a knife, and then I'll go in with the saw. I have some really fine kerf saws, so I'll use those. Like that one right there. I'll do a really fine one first, and I have a slightly wider kerf saw that I can do that matches the width of the panel lines. So you can see I was holding onto the piece with the saw right there is because I didn't want to nick that other edge with the saw. I was using it as a protector. So here I know the tape is not going to prevent me from cutting into the next step when I go over with a saw, but it's thick enough that if I go very slowly, I'll know when I start to hit the paper. And then as long as I stop, as soon as I hit the paper, I won't go through it. And it worked beautifully. I think it looks good. And once it's all painted and filled and double checked and everything, it's gonna look really good. Cool, and that's it for the building for this week and next week. Hope to start painting. This is something I think I showed you in the first video. This is my practice piece I did about a year ago. But that's where we're going. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next time.